Good day guys, welcome to my JavaScript course, and in this class we are going to be building a very beautiful game called the pig game. So let me show you the functionality of the game app. So here, once you click on roll dice, so you are going to have this dice number, and whatever number that you have there is going to be added to the current scores. So you keep rolling, so the dice number will be added to the current scores. You keep rolling until keep rolling, and the dice number will be added to the current scores. So once you roll one, all the current scores will be back to what is 0. Then it's going to switch player to what player 2. Then what you can, once you click again, once you roll the dice, so the numbers in the dice number will be added to the current scores of what player 2. So the only time current scores will be what is 0 is when what you roll a 1. And again, this functionality called hold, you can hold this current score. So once you hold this current score, the current score will be added to the overall score here. So if I click on this now, so you can see 15. So we are back to what is 0. Then it switches back to the what to player 1. So that's actually the functionality of the game, and also new game. So everything is going to, if you click on the new game button now, everything is going to reset back to its to the initial. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me show you the flow chart. And here's the flow chart. Once a user rolls a dice, it generates what a random dice roll from 1 to 6. So the number of the dials will display what the dice roll, and we check if the number of the dials is 1. If it is 1, they want to switch the player. If it is not 1, we want to add the dice roll to the current scores and want to display what the new score. Now the hold button, when you click on the hold button, it means you are going to add the current score to the total score, and if the score is greater or equals to 100, that means the current player wins, and if not, then switch what player. Then the reset game button is to set all scores to what is 0, and to set player 1 as what the starting player. So this is the functionality of the game. So with this flow chart, we will be able to view the functionality of this game. So first of all, in this class, we are going to look at the functionality of the roll dice. Once we roll a dice, we are going to look at all of these. Then in our next class, we are going to also implement other functionalities or create other functionalities as well. So let us create the functionality of rolling a dice. Once we roll a dice, we want to generate a random dice roll and display the dice roll, and we want to check if the dice roll if it is a 1. Then if it is a 1, which is if it is yes, then switch player, and if it is not, then add dice roll to what current score and display what the new score. So I'm going to create a folder, and I'll call it JavaScript 9. So I'm going to just move this piggyverse, move the piggy game to the JavaScript. So here I'm going to create a new file in the pig game folder. I'm going to create index, or I should just okay, let's do it like this. I'm going to copy all of this image, this, cut it, and paste it here. Good. So let me just delete this. Alright, so now in JavaScript class 9, we're going to have our index file, index.html. and style.css, and also script.js. So for the image, I'm going to send you the link to where you can download the image, so don't bother about that. So here, as usual, let's generate our boilerplate, and here I'm going to call this pig game, and let's also not forget to link our CSS style sheet, and also for the body, just link our script tag as script.js, and we are good to go. So let's create the HTML, the structure of the game application. Let us create it together. So here we are going to have a main tag, and in the main tag we're going to have a section. The section is going to have a class of player and player dash dash 0, and also player dash dash active. So you can see that this section has three class name. So like I said, that in my CSS course, that an HTML element can have more than one class name. So I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to make this as one, and I'm going to remove the active player. So the active player is the current player. So let us fill in the sections. So here, my h2, I'm going to call this class of name, and it's going to be and it's going to also have an ID of name dash dash 0, and we're going to call this player 1. I'm also going to have a paragraph. So everything I'm doing here is this is section 1, section 2, and we have the player, the total score, the current score, and everything. So this is what we want to build. So what so here going to have a class of score and an ID of score dash dash 0. So I'm just going to give it 56, for example. Then I'm going to have a D, I'll call it current, and inside of the D we're going to have a p tag with the class of current label, and it's going to be current. And another one, I'm just duplicate this, and I will call this a class of current scores, and also an ID of current dash dash 0. I'm going to give this a value of 0. So I think that's all, if I'm not mistaken. So that's all. So I'm just going to duplicate what I have here. I'm going to copy it and paste it in the second section. So all I just have to do is to change the name. So this will be name 1, this will be scores 1, and this will be current 1. Yes. So after this section, I'm going to have the image tag. So it's going to be die. Let's use die is 6. Let's call it dice image, and I'm going to give this a class of dice. Then we're going to have a button. So we are going to have a button. This button is going to have two classes, so it will be button and button new. So here, and I need to create an emoji for that. I need to use an emoji. What should I use now? Let me just use this. I'll change it later. A new game. Let me duplicate this 2 more times. So this is going to be BTN row and BTN O. So here, so this. I'll call this. Okay. So this will be old. Why this will be row dice. Row dice. Yeah. Yeah. So we're good to go. So let's see this. Let's preview this. So this is what we have here so far. Very basic. So let's style this. So I'm going to import a font. I'm going to be using a font in Google. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So just click on search for Google Fonts. So come here, Google Fonts. So you search for Nunito. Search for Nunito. So this is what you are going to click on this. As you click on this, you are going to select the 300, 400, the 500. So I'm going to select these three. I've selected mine. So this is what I have here. So I've selected mine. I'm just going to import it. So there are two ways to use a Google font. I think I explained that in my CSS course. So let's just going to paste this here. Let's move on. The next thing is to do a reset. So margin 0, padding 0, box size border box. So we are going to be fast with the CSS. The most important thing is the JavaScript. So say font size 62.5%. And for the body, this is what we want. Let me copy this. So done. So just paste this here. Okay, the next one is height. I want to give the height of 100 VH. Then background color, or let me use background. Then linear gradient. I'm going to add to top left. So this is the color that we want to use. DA is 0C81 0% percentage, and hash 9940 B92 100%. So let's see what we have. Can you see? Beautiful. So let's keep moving. So say display flex. We want to center the the child that is in the body tag, and we want to justify content to be center, align item to be center. So let us start the main tag. So we say I want the maximum width to be 80 rem. 80 rem, that will be 800 pixel. And I want the width to be 100%. And I want the background color to be hash E95793. I think I'm correct. Then I want border radius of 10 pixel. I want the display to be flex, so we can flex the sections. We can have the sections as a flex item. The one box shadow to be 0, 3 rem, 5 rem, RGBA. That's a combination of red, blue. Sorry about that. So I'm coming. Alright, so let's continue. So this will be 0. So this will be 0. 0.25 save. I want again. I want this to be position relative. The reason I want it to be position relative is because I want to be able to position this image and this 3 button. So let us see what we have achieved so far. So this is what we have. So next thing is, let us style the player. So when I mean player, I'm talking about this player section, the sections. So they both have a generic class name, player and player. So let us style that. So we'll make it flex of 50%. That is the flex basis. So say padding to be 9 rem. Say display flex direction colon, align item center. You want a transition, and I'm going to show you why. Transition 0.75 seconds. So let us start the elements. All these ones, they are continuous. Start the elements with the h2, which has a class of name. So this is what I'm talking about. H2 that has a class of name is h2 here. So let's give it a position relative, font size 4 rem, then a text transform, wants to be uppercase. Word spacing, select pixel, font weight, should be like 300, margin button should be 1 rem. So let us style this core. So that's what we have done so far for the name. Can you see this is the name? Let's proceed for this core. So let's see this core. So we're talking about this p tag here. For this core, it's going to be font size of 8 rem, font weight of 300, then the color will be C7365F. Why the margin button, let's make it auto. So let us start the player active. Let's start the player active. So the player active is just the background color actually. So it's going to be 25, 4. That's it for player active. So let's go. What's the problem? Okay, it's supposed to be 2 hyphen. Yeah. So can you see? This is the player active. That's for section 1. Then let's move on. Let's copy this. So player active for the name. The font weight should be 700. Can you see? 700. So that's the player active. The player active scores. Player active scores. Font weight should be 400. Player active current. Font opacity to 1. So let us start the current. What is the current? So this current here is the current, the container. Let us start the current. So we'll say current background color. What do we see in this one? We want the opacity to be 0.8. Then we want the border radius to be 9 pixels. We want the color to be white. We want the width to be 65% relative to the section, and padding to be 2 rem. Text align to the center. Then transition. So for the current label, we have the text transform of uppercase, margin button of 1 rem, then font size of 1.7. Color should be this ash color. Current score. We want the font size to be 3.5. Let's see what we have. So the next one is to start the absolute position element. So let us start this for the PTN. the position to be absolute. The left should be 50%. There. Transform, translate to properly center it. -50 to center it on the horizontal axis. We want the color of ash 444. We want a background color. We want the background to be none. Yes, we want the background to be none. And that's for button actually. None. We want outline also to be what? None. We want the font family. We want it to inherit the font family. And we want the font size to be 1.8 rem. And text transform to be uppercase, and the font weight to be 400, and then transition, one transition to be all 0.2 seconds. Then we want the background color to be RGBA 255 255 255 0.255.6. Then padding to be 0.7 rem, 2.5 rem. Then we want the border radius to be 50 rem, and what again? Box shadow. We want the box shadow to be 1.75 rem, 3.5 rem, and RGB of 0. So I think I'm done. So let us see. So now, let's start the button. BTN will be top 4 rem, and dot BTN to row. The top will be 3.3 rem, while dot BTN row, the top is 40.1 rem. They want the BTN active, on the active to be transform, translate, we want the box shadow to be 0, 2 rem, RGB 0.15. Save that. We want the dice itself, that's the dice image. We want the position to be absolute. We want the left to be 50%. We want the top to be 16.5 rem, 16.5 rem. I want transform, translate it to center it properly on the horizontal axis. y, we want the height to be 8 rem. We want box shadow to be 0, 2 rem, 5 rem, RGBA 0, 0.2. So I think that's all. So this is what we have so far. I see. Beautiful. Beautiful. So for the button, let me give it a cursor pointer. Yeah. I see. Beautiful. So and the next thing is let us start the dot player winner. Dot player winner class. Let's give it a pattern of, we might change this later actually. 2 player winners. I want it to be front with 7 color. See this. So I think that's all. So this is the styling for this game project. So the next is to look at the functionality of the game. That's the most important thing. So now we are going to look at the functionality of the game. Alright, so let us build the functionality of the piggy game. So to do that, first of all, we need to select all the DOM elements. And to do that, we can use any of the methods that I taught you to select HTML elements. So let us start with this. The first element we are going to select is player --0, player --1, and scores --0, scores --1, then current scores --0, current scores --1, then the dice, then the buttons. So these are the elements that we are going to be selecting in this class, in this project. So let us go straight in. So first of all, we say const. So player 0 elements, that's player 0 equals to document dot query selector. So I'm going to use query selector. So and that will be dot player --0. So I'm going to copy this and give this one, and this one will be player 1 element. So I'm also going to duplicate these 2 more times, and I'll call this score 0 and score 1L. So here in this case it's going to be hashtag, because it's actually an ID. So hashtag score 0. Just going to copy this. Then change it to 1. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this course is an ID. So let's proceed. So Next one I want to show you is, let's duplicate this two more times. So this will be called current zero, current one down, and this will be current dash zero and current dash one. So let us also select the dice. So dice L, because document dot query selector. So it's a class, so it's going to be dot dice. Let me duplicate this, and this will be const btn new btn row, and this will be btn old. So let's just change the value. So here is going to be .btn dash new .btn dash row .btn dash old. So this is what we have. So we selected all the elements that we are going to be manipulating. So now let's go straight in. So what we want to do is this, this is our game. So we want to set this actually to, we want to set this course to is 0. We want to set the test content to be 0. We don't want this. So we want to set the test content of these scores for each of the players to be what is 0. Oh, there's a mistake here. Player 1 is supposed to be player 2. So let me rectify that. Player 2, and let me even change this scores to be, let's say, 35. So let us change the test content of this to be 0 and test content of this to be 0 as well. So to do that, let's come to our JavaScript. So here I'm going to say score dot test content. Of course, I think I already told you, I explained this, so this shouldn't be new to us. And then dot test content equals to what is 0. So if we go back and let's see 0 is 0. Fantastic. So the next thing we also want to look at is to add an event listener to this btn row. So to do that, we are going to say btn row dot add event listener, because when we click on the btn row, that is when we want to run the functionality of changing the dice to get. So, and before then, I want to also hide this. I want to hide this image, this dice image, and the only time I want it to be reviewed is when I click on the bottom row. So to do that, I'm going to say dice dot class list, then dot add what do you want to add, then hidden. So let me explain class list to you. Let me explain class list. What exactly is class list? Class list is an API, JavaScript API. Class list is actually a JavaScript API that enables us to manage classes using a variety of methods. I repeat, class list is a JavaScript API that enables us to manage classes using a variety of methods. So the class list object has 5 methods that can be used for managing classes. Let's say, for example, if you want to add a new class to an element, you use what class list dot what add. So add is a method is a method that comes with the class list object, and the method add is used to add what class name or classes to an element. And we have what remove. So remove is used to what remove a class, an existing class name from an element. And we have toggle. Toggle simply means that if a class name is in an element, I want you to remove it, and if it is not there, I want you to add it. So that's the meaning of what toggle is, like a switch. If the class name is there, remove it. If the class name is not there, add it. So that's the meaning of what toggle. And we have contain. Contain is used to check if a particular class name is in an element. If a particular element contains, if an element contains a particular class name or a particular class, so contain is actually used to check whether a class is in an element or not. So, and for items, which is the last of the methods of the class list object, the item which is used to check for the index of the class, because an element can have more than one class value. So you can keep adding different class name to the same element. So that's that. So we are going to look at add now. So we already have this class defined down here, hidden, and we want the display to be none. But this hidden class is not in any of the elements here. So with the class list, we can now add this hidden class to this word, to the btn, to the dials element. So this, where's the dial? So this is the dial, dice image, sorry about that, the dice image, and the dice image had the class of what? Dice. So here then we have a class that we created called hidden that is not in any of what the elements that we have here. So we selected the dice, then we now what attach what the class list API, then we add the hidden class there. So now this dice now have two class names. It has the dice class name and the hidden class name. So this hidden is to set the image to be what? None. So can you see? You can't see the image anymore. The only time you'll be able to see the image is when you click on this button. So let us look at that later. So do you understand that now? So we add the hidden class to what? To the dice. The hidden class was not a class name, was not part of the class of what? Dice. So we had to what? Add it using what? Class list. And I said class list is an object that comes with five methods that we can use to manage what? Classes. So that's that. So let's continue. So add event list now. So what we want to listen for? We want to listen for the click event. So after that, we want to create a function, and this function we are going to set the dice dot class list. We want to set it. We want to remove the hidden class. We want to remove what? The hidden class. Do you get it now? So if you save, now when I click on this dice, can you see that you'll be able to see this? So that's not all. So now we want to be able to generate a random number between 1 to 6, because we want to generate a random number between 1 to 6. Why? Because if you keep clicking on this dice row, the only image that we have, the only image dice that we have is this 6. But what we want to do is we want to click that whenever we click on the row dice, we want to have different value of these dice. We want to have different value of these dice, and the dice ranges from value 1 towards 6. So we have to create what? A random number that will give us a value from what? 1 to 6, and this is how to do it. So let dice equals math dot trunk. So I think I showed you how to use this before while we're building the random my guess game. So times 6, so to get a number between 0, so say plus what? 1. So now how can we use the random number to manipulate this to manipulate the image dice? how can we use a random number to manipulate the image dice? Now notice that the dice, the names of the dice, you can see the names of the dice are dice 1, dice 2, dice 3. So this number that we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can manipulate it by saying, okay, we want the dice L, that's the one that was selected, this one that was selected. We want the dice L, we want the source. We want the source of the image. Are you with me? We want the source of the image. We want to change the source of the image. We want the image to be dynamic, and the source of the image is dice -1. So it's going to be dice dash. So this one now is going to be dynamic. So this one is going to be the value of the random number. So if I click on once I click on the bottom row, anytime I click on the bottom row, it generates a new random number for me, a different number entirely from the previous. So anytime I click on the bottom row, anytime I click on it, it generates a new number between 1 to 6. So that number I want to dynamically fix it here. So you can now do dice here. So if the dice, once we click on the dice button, the button row, once we click on the button and it generates a random number, let's say a random number of 3. So this is going to be dice -3. So it's going to bring out this. So if we click again, it's going to generate another random number, and that is what we are going to use here. So that's the beauty behind this. So you can see how we've been able to manipulate this. So very simple. So that's that. If I click on this now, what am I having? I'm coming. Okay, I'm supposed to add my .png. Sorry about that. I'm supposed to add my .png. So if I click, can you see 3? If I click again, it's giving me a different number. Can you see a different number, a different number, a different number, a different number? Fantastic. So that's that. We've been able to accomplish that. So now, once we click on the bottom row, we want to check if the dice is different from 1. Are you with me? So we only want to keep playing if the dice is different from 1. So if the dice is different from 1, we want to keep playing. So we say dice, if it is different from 1, we want the current player to keep playing. But if it is equals to 1, we want to switch the player. So this is how to do it. So first of all, we need to initialize some variables here. We need to initialize some variables here. So I'm going to call this let current scores. Let current scores be equals to 0. Let active player as well be equals to what is 0. So let's save that. So let current score be equals to 0 and let active player be equals to 0. So now if the dice value is different from 1, meaning if the dice value is not equals to 1, that's what it means. It is different from 1. What we want to do is to add the current scores. Is to add the dice value to the current scores. Dice value to the current scores like this. So the value that we have here is going to be added to what? This current score, and you know the current score is what is 0. So there's a shortcut for this, if you remember, and it's very simple. So this is it, very simple and interesting. Very simple and interesting. So this is it. Now what we are going to do is to set the current element, the test content. We want to set it towards the current scores. Current scores. So if you save, so now this is what it means here. First of all, we initialize the current scores to be what is 0, and we wonder why do we have to do it outside of what this add event listener. The reason is if we had declared these current scores inside of the add event listener, so every time we click on the button row, anytime we click on the button row, it's going to reset the current scores to 0, 0, 0, and we don't want that. So we want to what? So we have to declare the current scores outside of this function, outside of this btn row. So every time if the value of the dice is not equals to 1, we want to add that value to the current score. So this is it here. So now we want to now change the test content of this. That means the test content of this current scores. We want to change the test content to the current scores that we have here. So it's as simple as that. So if we click now, am I having coming? Supposed to be, hold on. Did I make any mistake here? Let me check oh, look at it. 0. So if I roll a dice, can you see 5? If I roll again, can you see 7, 1? So once I roll 1, I want to be able to switch to the other player. So anytime I roll a 1, I want to switch to the other player, and I want the current scores of the current player to be what? To be set back to what is 0 while I switch to the next player. Do you get that now? So, and to do that, what we are going to do is to declare an active player set to what is 0. To declare an active player set to what is 0. Now, this active player set to 0, you know we have two players, player 1 and player 2. So if player 1 is playing, and the moment he rolls 1, we want the current player, which is player 1, we want the current score to be 0, and want to switch to the next player, which is what, player 2. And if player 2 also rolls 1, we want to set the current score to be 0 and want to come back to the next player, which is what, player 1. So to be able to dynamically do that, it is simple. We have to declare what active player to be set to what is 0. So now in this case, if the dice is different from 1, we want to add this. Else, if the dice is 1, then we want to switch player. So this is it here. We want to switch player. And to switch player, it is quite simple. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to comment this one here. To switch player, this is what we are going to do. We are going to dynamically switch the player using this 0 and 1 that we have for the current scores. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say document dot get element by ID. You can either use query selector or get element by ID, because it is actually an ID value. So this is what we are going to do. Or let me just use, let me use get element by ID. So current dash dash, it's supposed to be current dash dash is 0 or current dash dash 1. But the thing is, the is 0 or 1, we want to have that to be dynamic. We want that to be what, dynamic. That is why we have to set what active player to be what is 0. So now what we are going to do is, instead of, we need to put this in the backtick like this. Yes, so then our $sign. So here, the number which is supposed to be 0 or 1 is now going to be substituted with what, this active player. So we're going to say active player like this. Simple. Active what, player, then dot test content equals current scores. So this one that we commented is not dynamic. This one will only be giving us the current score of the current score of this first element, the first player. But we want it in such a way that as we want it to be dynamic in such a way that we can be able to switch from one player to another. So now we say document.getElement by ID current dash dash active player. The initial value of the active player is what? Is 0. So it's going to be current dash dash is 0 dot test content equals to what? I scores. So now once we switch the player, how do we switch the player? To switch the player, it is quite easy. First of all, we'll say if active player, so we are going to use a ternary operator in this case. I'm going to say active player, then we'll say if active player is equals to 0. If active player is equals to 0, then we want you to switch it to what? 1. Else, if it is not else, we want it to remain what? 0. So this is what it means. Are you with me? So this is what it means. Here now we say active player equals, this is the variable and this is the value. What's the value? Is 0. So we are saying if is 0 is equals to 0, we want it to be what? We want to switch it to what? 1. If not, we want to go back to what? Is 0. That is what it means. And the next thing is we want to set the player we want to set the class list, because here now you can see the color of this color is the active player color. But what we want to do is once we switch player, we want this active to be what? The color of this active player to move to the one to the next player. So to do that, we are going to say player OL dot class list, then dot toggle. What do you want to toggle? We want to toggle player active, which simply means that if this class player active is in player 0, I want you to remove it, and if it is not there, I want you to add it. So in this case, I'm going to do it also for player 1L. So it means that once we switch player, the active background color will also move to the player that we switched to. So let's say, just watch. Can you see? It moves to this side. Just watch. It moves to this side. Can you see? So let's refresh this. So this is the color of the active player. So if I keep rolling, once I get to 1, you see the transition. Can you see? It moves to this part here. So once it moves to this part, we want this current score to be what? Is 0. So to do that, we first of all have to do it before we switch. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. Paste it in the else. So I'm going to change the current score to be what? To be is 0. Then I'm going to also, that's the test content actually. Then I'm going to set the current scores back to what? Is 0. So this is what we have here. Can you see the technicality? So once this is how to switch player actually. So if the dice is different from 1, that means if the value of the dice is different from 1, meaning if it's not equals to 1, then we want to add the value of the dice to the current scores. Then we want to now add the value of the current scores as the test content of the active player. And for us to be able to know the active player, we have to initialize or set the active player to what is 0 here. Then we'll now dynamically select using this current is 0 earlier. So we selected the document, the current scores by using document.getElement by ID, then current hyphen. So instead of it to be is 0 or 1, so we now substitute it with what? The active player. So we say active player now is going to be dynamic, meaning initially the value of active player is what? Is 0. So we are saying current dash that is 0. then test content equals to what? Current scores. But once the active player or once the dice is equals to 1, it will come to this else block. So this else block here, we are going to still set. So once it is equals to 1, it's going to come to this else block. So before we switch the active player, are you with me? Before we switch the active player, we are going to set the current scores, the current scores of the current player to be what? Is 0. Then we'll now switch. We'll now say if active player is equals to 0, we want it to be what? 1. Are you with me now? We want it to be 1, or else what? Is 0. So it's going to come back to this if, and this one now will now be what? 1 instead of what? Is 0. So that is how it is. Very simple. Very, very, very simple. Very, very simple. So do you understand that now? Very simple. So that's that. I think that's that about the functionality of the button row. So we are going to look at the old button functionality and the new game functionality, and now we can refactor our code. Also, we are going to look at that in our next class. But just please understand this. Can you see how it is moving? Can you see? Keeps moving. So that's that. Very simple. So please go over it and understand it very, very, very well. So it is quite simple. If you don't really understand this functionality, because the switch player functionality, please reach out to me and I'm going to explain again. But I think okay, that's that. So we have come to the end of today's class. We'll meet in our next class.